Hello, my name is John Rogers Smith. I'm going to be talking to you today about ethics and how to our engineers in general and a little on specifically to you as a student. This talk is designed to be a discussion that you would participate in, but Mr. Knowles and I are going to try to play the roles for some discussion to make up for the fact that this is pre-recorded. And the much of the practical examples in this discussion come from colleagues and other people who participated in prior seminars that were interactive. So we'll start out talking about what ethics means, some definitions. We'll look at the SPE guide for professional conduct for petroleum engineers. That's essentially a ethical code of conduct. We'll look real briefly at some examples from the Louisiana rules for professional engineers that apply to people like myself. And then we'll look at some real situations that occurred and discuss those from an ethical point of view. Basically, present the situation and then talk about, well, what would you do or what would I do in that situation? And for many ethical dilemmas, problems, situations, challenges, there are more than one approach that can work. And there are certainly more than one viewpoint that needs to be taken into account in figuring out what approach to take that makes the most sense. We'll talk about an example student situation, and then we'll summarize things. And there'll be a couple places here where it's going to look like it's a turning point presentation, and the purpose of that is so that you can get to see what kind of responses your peers gave in a seminar like this 2 years ago. So a dictionary says that ethics is the discipline dealing with what is good and bad and with our moral duty and obligation. Specifically applying to us in terms of professional ethics, ethics are the principles of conduct governing us as a professional or a group as professionals. And the key point is that in ethics, our moral obligations are foremost. And the legal obligations that we have, or the laws, or the contractual requirements that we may be working under, are just a subset of all of the obligations we might have to ourselves and our profession and our communities. So, and there's a perspective that Dr. Bassioni had. He was our department chair for many years and was the dean of the College of Engineering when we were having this discussion. And that is that to be ethical is to do what is right or moral, even if we're not required to do so, even if we require some risk to our injury to our career or our standing or our business by doing so. So one of the ways to put those questions in a practical sense is to think about some of the situations that you may be aware of or that our industry was involved in, and think about how you would feel if you read about what you had done in that situation, or maybe what you did not do in LSU Reveille or whatever your favorite news source is. And certainly there are things that have happened in our industry that reflect poorly on the industry and reflect poorly on some of the things that were done in that incident and the individuals that did them. So I said we were going to talk about SPE. Membership in our professional society, SPE, is not typically required by government or industry or educational institutions like LSU. Nevertheless, many of us, maybe most of us worldwide, are SPE members. So a question that we asked this previous class was, are you an SPE member currently or not? And it turns out that many of the students, as you would expect, were SPE members. And there's some real advantages to being an SPE member, not just from an ethical point of view, which we're going to talk about, but from many practical points of view. So I want to take this opportunity to encourage you to continue your SPE membership or to join if you're not currently a member. It's going to be pretty important in going forward in your career. So I've been an SPE member since the summer that I went to work full time in the oil industry. I found that the membership offers many advantages. Lifelong learning is one that you heard about somewhere along the way. There are opportunities to have mentors within the organization. You're getting exposed to new technologies. You're going to have opportunities for networking. And there's some special membership provisions for recent graduates. The link is on the screen. And down at the bottom of that page, there's an explanation that says members who are transitioning from student to professional membership upon graduation and with no lapse in membership are eligible to receive their first year membership free. So you may want to investigate that. Legally, professional engineers must be licensed by their government. So in the US and in many other countries, if we're working as an individual professional for hire by companies or other individuals, we have a legal responsibility to be licensed. And many of those responsibilities that we have are written into law as a code of conduct for licensed engineers. I'll show you just a taste of that in a little bit. You're not eligible to be licensed yet. You've probably heard about the Fundamental of Engineering exam, that one step in becoming licensed after earning your degree. But the next question that we asked our previous students was, is there a code of conduct that you should comply with as an SPE member, or that you should be aware of just because you're a responsible individual and want to know about what your profession expects? So it turns out that when we asked that question, even more students than were SPE members were aware that SPE has a code of conduct, or that there were codes of conduct like this. So evidently, that's the lead-in to our So that's a good lead-in to what's going to be the next segment of this presentation, where we'll talk about SPE and its code of conducts and how that might relate to us.